God of War is finally here, and Santa Monica Studio has outdone themselves. God of War provides an experience that is immense. It's fun, challenging, engaging, satisfying, savage, and even heartfelt in all the right places. I've been given a God of War that I didn't even know I wanted. After all of the praise it's been getting from media outlets, I expected that my high expectations would be its downfall, but it wasn't. It surpassed them in every way. So let's jump in and find out why it's so good.
Find your way home. You are free.
God of War tells the story of a father and son on a quest to honour the dying wish of a loved one, and how they will do anything to fulfill it. They brave all manner of beasts and landscapes whilst on the journey, meet new allies and make new enemies. That's all I'll say about the premise of God of War. This is a story that is best told with fresh eyes and ears. The more you know, the weaker the impact. Just know that God of War is a true pleasure to experience.
There it is!
Hold! What are you doing? Now its guard is up. Only fire. Only fire when I tell you to fire.
Every inch of God of War has been lovingly crafted. Any footage that you may have seen prior to actually playing pales in comparison. From the moment I pressed play, my jaw dropped at what was on display, and it never had a chance to recover. Without spoiling anything, the environments that you come across in the game show a deep range in design and colour palette. There's one area that would be done a disservice just to be called colourful. Never once did I become bored of an environment even after spending hours at a time within them. The characters have been given just as much attention. The way that the wrinkles around Kratos' eyes shift as he goes through various emotions, the way that the tufts of hair on Atreus' tunic sway with the wind. God of War is a work of art. It's easily the best looking game on PlayStation 4, and considering that this is the platform that houses the likes of Ratchet & Clank, Uncharted 4 and Horizon Zero Dawn, that's quite an accomplishment. As if the stunning visuals weren't enough, there's also a mesmerising soundtrack to accompany it. Every note serves to enhance, it's always an aid, be it in story or combat. It never takes over or underwhelms, it only ever complements, which is the highest praise I could give to a musical score. When a game is presented this well, the UI may become a distraction or break the immersion, but thankfully that never happens here. UI is always minimal during gameplay, and if there is ever something to interact with, you're notified by a small white circle in the environment which can often blend into the scene, so it never becomes intrusive. And even though it can blend into the background, that doesn't mean it's hard to know what to interact with. The game does a good job of introducing designs in the environment to look for, so that you know what you can interact with. These designs also fit well with the rest of the environment, and so don't ever stick out like a sore thumb to remind you that you're playing a game. However, if you prefer to be completely immersed and play with no HUD at all, the game also allows you that freedom to do so. The UI also does a good job of managing an immense amount of information in the menus. I'll explain what all this means later, but all you need to know now is that throughout the game you garner a lot of information. It seems intimidating at first, but as the game goes on, it starts to unravel and make sense in good time. This is where the real pleasure of the game lies. The game is in its most simplistic forms, challenging and satisfying. Finding new areas and figuring out the best ways to navigate them, or walking into a fight that you weren't ready for, but you stayed anyway and you conquered it. You become addicted to the challenge. I often found myself in encounters that obviously required equipment better than that which I had, but I refused to leave because the game is built upon skill, and if you allow the game to force you to be better, you will become better, and that is the ultimate form of satisfaction. People often use the word solid to emphasize the merit of a game's systems, but the combat in God of War feels like so much more than that. It's deep, demanding, and rewarding. If you take the time to understand the mechanics of the combat, you'll find each encounter, especially the more challenging ones, to be all the more satisfying. It's fun to charge headfirst into battle and exercise the more savage nature of Kratos, which I often did in the early stages of the game, but as you progress, you'll start to understand the strategy of it all. You aren't the same Spartan that you once were in ancient Greece. You're far wiser, more methodical. Sometimes it's better to keep your distance first. Throw your axe from the edge of the battlefield to stun or freeze an enemy, or have Atreus fire an arrow to stun your target as you charge towards the fight to gain the upper hand. Speaking of Atreus, the way that he fits into combat is far more useful than I could have ever imagined. Having him stun the enemy that you're wailing on so that you can draw the combo out just a little longer, or him of his own fruition jumping on the shoulders of an enemy and choking them, leaving them open to your attacks, is a true asset to gameplay, rather than a nuisance. Just as in all of the previous God of War games, magic plays a part. As you explore the world, you'll find light and heavy runes to place onto your axe. There's a large variety of them to discover if you choose to stray from the path to explore. The variety allows for you to experiment and find the best fighting style for you. Do you want to concentrate all of your power onto one enemy, or would you rather affect a larger area, or perhaps even both? It's all left up to you. Whatever playstyle you may choose, some enemies will force you to adapt to their rules. Some are resistant to your axe, so you have to beat them with your bare hands to cause stun damage and hopefully build to a finishing move. Some will be so strong that they'll kill you in one hit, so you have to be much more careful in your approach. I won't say any more on the enemies that you'll encounter in the game, because discovering a new enemy type and figuring out the best way to deal with them is often a fun and rewarding experiment that I think you should experience for yourself. Whilst on the subject of experimenting, the puzzles within the game are fantastic. Rather than the simple move a block or pull a lever, this time your weapon has a purpose. Your axe can be used to turn paddles, freeze items in place, or just plain old break something if need be. Some are a genuine challenge as well, and can require a combination of the tools that you've gathered throughout the journey. Even Atreus can be of use. There will be many puzzles that you won't have access to until later in the game, because of the equipment that you gain as the story progresses, giving the game a more Metroidvania vibe. Many of these puzzles will be found off the beaten path, which brings me to exploration. Exploration is a huge part of the game. It's far more open than I expected it to be, especially considering that the narrative is so well done. There's even a sort of hub world that I won't spoil for you with any footage, but you navigate it with a canoe and you're always encouraged to explore it at your own pace. I never felt like I was being forced into one area to continue the story. I often found that I would be exploring one area and then a branching path would lead me to somewhere completely new, and it's always a pleasure to explore because the environment is designed so eloquently. There's always a puzzle to solve, enemies to fight, or loot to plunder. That's another massive part of this game, loot. Throughout the game you'll find materials for upgrades, runes, enchantments, talismans, and even armor. The latter three of the loot just listed is put into rarity categories: common, rare, legendary, and epic. And it's all so utterly addicting. Now that I've finished the game, I can't wait to jump back in and hunt for materials that I can use to craft legendary equipment for some of the harder fights that I had to choose to leave behind. All of your equipment can be upgraded as well, using the materials and hack silver that you find along the way by bringing it to the ever-mobile dwarven blacksmiths, Brock and Sindri. You can also upgrade your runes and movesets by using XP. The skill trees are relatively simplistic, but offer an immediately satisfying and gratifying form of progression, since many of the upgrades add new skills to your moveset, and it's always fun to try them out. At the time of completion, I've clocked about 25 hours into God of War, which does include a few side missions here and there, and loved every single moment of it. If that's not enough for you and you want more to do after you've completed the game, first, I'd say don't be so greedy, and second, I'd say that the post-story content is pretty good as well. I estimate that I still have another 10 to 15 hours of gameplay left. I've still got plenty of loot to find, puzzles to solve, optional bosses to savagely beat, labors to complete, collectibles to find, and side missions that feel like more than just busy work because of the impeccable design. And if that's still not enough, the game also offers a Give Me God of War difficulty setting that may or may not have made me doubt my self-worth. So take part at your own risk.
No. Finish what you started.
If having truly exceptional gameplay wasn't enough already, the story is also incredible. The main plot is both intimate and grand, proving that you can have epic set pieces whilst also telling a personal story that matters. All of the characters that you meet along the way never feel like plot devices either. They're always developed in a way that makes you glad that they're a part of the roster. For example, the blacksmithing dwarves Brock and Sindri that I mentioned earlier are always a delight to interact with. I'll say no more about the main plot of the game or of its characters, so that you can experience it for yourself, but know that it is an absolute pleasure to watch unfold. God of War is a masterpiece, with stunning presentation, an infectious gameplay loop, and an intimate and admirable story. It's easy to see why it's being heralded as the game of the generation. This game deserves your time, and you'd be doing yourself a disservice to miss out on it. It may not be the same old God of War that we once knew, but it is so much more. That does it for this video, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I'm going to be doing a spoiler-filled analysis of God of War, which should be out for next Tuesday, so hopefully I'll see you there. As always, if you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't, that's cool too. Leave a dislike. Leave a comment, let me know how to improve. Alternatively, you could leave a comment about God of War. Have you played it yet? If not, are you dead? Thanks again, guys. I'll see you in the next one.